Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today because we have some very exciting General Hospital news to talk about, and it's definitely worth the wait. What began as a romantic evening for Jordan and Curtis quickly turned into one of the most frightening and painful moments this General Hospital story has delivered. There is something especially cruel about an accident like this because it does not come with warning. One moment, two people are simply driving together, sharing a quiet night, and the next, everything is noise, sparks, broken glass, and fear. Jordan's desperate condition after the crash makes the whole event feel even heavier. This is no minor incident, no simple roadside scare that can be forgotten by the next episode. This is the kind of tragedy that changes lives, exposes secrets, and forces every person connected to that road to live under a cloud of suspicion. The most haunting part is that the truth still feels incomplete. The audience knows Jordan and Curtis were not alone on that road, and the uncertainty over which driver truly caused the crash is what gives this story its sharpest edge. Jordan's suffering is the emotional center of the entire mystery. Once the accident happened, the story immediately stopped being only about cars and traffic and became about survival. She was left in terrible shape, and the seriousness of her injuries gave the crash a much deeper meaning. Jordan is not just another victim in a dramatic twist. She is a woman with a history, with strength, with loved ones who now have to stand helplessly by while doctors fight to save her. Her physical condition makes the search for answers feel urgent and personal. Every second she spends in surgery, every sign that her body is struggling, reminds everyone that this was not just bad luck. Something went wrong on that road, and somebody helped cause it. That harsh truth hangs over the entire storyline, like a storm cloud that refuses to move. Curtis also becomes a tragic figure in this moment because he was supposed to be sharing tenderness and closeness with Jordan, only to be thrown into violence and shock instead. There is something heartbreaking about the fact that they were on their way to enjoy one another when danger suddenly rushed at them. That detail matters because it adds a layer of emotional cruelty to the event. This was not a reckless night out or a moment caused by their own poor choices. They were simply in the wrong place when someone else's actions turned the road into a trap. Curtis survives the crash, but surviving does not mean escaping it. He is left carrying the horror of what happened, the image of Jordan injured beside him, and the growing need to understand who put them both in that position. Pain does not end when the wreck stops moving. Sometimes it only begins there. The wrong-way car is what first makes the accident feel so sinister. A vehicle coming toward them in the same lane is not a small mistake. It is the kind of sudden danger that forces a driver to react in panic. Jordan jerking the wheel was an instinctive act of survival, but it also became the final movement before disaster. The car slamming into the guardrail, the shower of sparks, the force of the impact, the airbags exploding open, all of it created a scene that would leave anyone shaken. Yet what makes it more unsettling is that the road did not belong only to Jordan and Curtis that night. Other cars were out there, moving through the same darkness, crossing paths within moments of the crash. That means the accident may not be as simple as one wrong-way driver and one victimized couple. It may have been a web of rushed decisions, hidden panic, and guilty silence. Brooke Lynn stands out immediately because her night was clearly marked by urgency and unusual behavior. Before she ever got behind the wheel, she had been drinking wine with Lucy at the Quartermain mansion. That detail may seem small at first, but stories like this are often built on small things that become important later. It was not a wild party, and it was not presented as extreme drinking, yet even a modest amount of alcohol can dull a person's reactions and soften their judgment. More importantly, Brooke Lynn left in a hurry. Dante's call about Gio playing guitar at Charlie's gave her emotional motivation to move fast, and that kind of emotional rush can make any driver more careless. Excitement, impatience, distraction, and even a little wine can combine in ways that become dangerous before a person even realizes it. Still, what truly makes Brooke Lynn suspicious is not only what happened before she drove, but how she seemed after. Once she arrived at Charlie's, there was something off about her. She did not feel light, relaxed, or happy in the way someone might after rushing to a family moment. Instead, she seemed burdened, uneasy, almost haunted by something she had just experienced. Dante noticed it, and the audience noticed it too. This is why Brooke Lynn attracts so much attention in the mystery. Suspicion does not always come from hard proof. Sometimes it comes from the way a person carries hidden fear. Sometimes guilt shows itself in silence, in a distracted look, in the inability to fully settle into a room. Brooke Lynn's strange behavior did not prove she caused the accident, but it made her emotional state impossible to ignore. That emotional unease creates a painful possibility. If Brooke Lynn was involved even accidentally, then her story becomes much more tragic than simply making a mistake behind the wheel. It becomes the story of someone decent who may have panicked at the worst possible moment. A good person can still do harm. A frightened person can still keep driving. A guilty person can still pretend nothing happened because facing the truth feels too terrifying. That is what makes her such a compelling suspect. She may not be heartless, she may not have intended to hurt anyone, but intention does not undo consequences. If she saw the crash happen and failed to stop, that failure matters just as much as the first mistake. Jordan's condition is so severe that every moment of lost help now carries emotional weight. The road did not just become the scene of an accident, it became the scene of abandonment. There is another layer to Brooke Lynn's possible involvement that makes the story even richer. She is someone the audience expects to have a conscience. That means if she is guilty, her punishment would not begin in a courtroom or with public blame. It would begin inside her own mind. She would have to live with the image of that violent crash and with the fear that someone might connect her to it. Every strange look from Dante, every mention of Jordan's name, every new medical update would strike her like a warning. Even if nobody accused her directly, she would still be trapped in a private prison of dread. That kind of internal suffering is often what General Hospital does best, and Brooke Lynn's behavior suggests that inner conflict may already be eating away at her. Isaiah brings a different and equally powerful form of suspicion into the story. Where Brooke Lynn feels like a suspect shaped by visible guilt, Isaiah feels like a suspect shaped by pressure and secrecy. He was not on the road for pleasure. He was hurrying to deal with a serious medical issue involving Rocco's badly infected wound. The urgency of that situation matters. A doctor or medical professional moving fast to help someone can still become careless if his mind is overloaded. Isaiah was being pulled in different directions, and everything around him was emotionally tense. Lulu wanted the problem handled quietly. Rocco needed help. Isaiah had responsibilities elsewhere. Portia was waiting for him. This was not a calm, ordinary drive. It was a drive weighted with urgency, secrecy, and emotional strain. That is why Isaiah's reaction later becomes so important. Once the news of Jordan's crash reached him, he did not come across as merely concerned. He seemed shaken in a more personal way. He stared into space, and there was a silence around him that felt heavier than simple sympathy. In stories like this, that kind of stillness can mean many things. It can mean guilt, it can mean recognition, it can mean the mind suddenly replaying an event it wishes it could erase. Isaiah's reaction invites the audience to wonder whether he saw more than he admitted, or whether he already knows the terrible answer to the question everyone else is asking. He may not have intended harm, but intention is not what the story is testing. The story is testing responsibility. Isaiah's possible role also feels especially dramatic because he is tied to healing. A man connected to care and medical aid becoming part of the cause of such suffering would be bitterly ironic. If he was rushing to save one person while helping endanger another, the emotional conflict would be enormous. He would be forced to carry not only fear of exposure, but the unbearable contradiction of his own actions. Someone meant to help others would have become part of the reason Jordan now needs emergency surgery. That possibility does not make him evil, but it makes him deeply human in a painful way. A rushed decision, a distracted moment, a glance taken at the wrong second, and a life is thrown into chaos. That kind of guilt would be hard to hide and perhaps impossible to survive emotionally. The mystery becomes more layered because neither Brooke Lynn nor Isaiah feels like a complete answer by themselves. Both have reasons to be on the road. Both had emotional distractions. Both had reactions that now seem suspicious. Yet the story keeps reminding us that there were more vehicles out there. Danny and Charlotte were also on a nighttime drive, caught up in their own young excitement and private world. Their presence adds another disturbing possibility. Teenagers wrapped up in themselves may miss danger until it is too late. They may see something shocking and not know how to react. They may be frightened into silence. Even if they did not directly cause the crash, they may have witnessed something important. Their youth would not excuse their silence, but it would explain how fear could keep them from speaking quickly. The idea that more than one vehicle may have contributed to the crash is what gives this storyline its strongest dramatic pull. This may not turn out to be the fault of one reckless stranger. It may instead be a chain of poor choices made by several different people in the same stretch of night. One driver may have drifted, another may have rushed, another may have seen the aftermath, and failed to stop. Tragedy often works this way. It is not always born from pure evil. Sometimes it grows out of ordinary people making selfish, frightened, or careless decisions at exactly the wrong time. That possibility makes the accident feel more realistic and more painful, because it suggests Jordan's suffering may be the result of not one failure, but many. What makes the entire event morally devastating is that no one stopped. That detail may end up mattering as much as the crash itself. It is one thing to make a mistake in a moment of confusion. It is another thing entirely to leave wounded people behind. The road was not empty after the impact. Someone could have pulled over. Someone could have checked on Jordan and Curtis. Someone could have called for help sooner. Instead, the silence of the other drivers now becomes part of the crime. The crash injured Jordan, but abandonment deepened the wound. It told the audience that whoever was involved feared consequences more than they valued human life. For viewers, especially those who connect deeply to the emotional side of a story, that is what makes this plot so upsetting. It is not just about a car accident, it is about a collapse of conscience. Then comes the arrival of Valentine and Carly, which adds another emotional turn to the scene. Their appearance at the accident site makes them the ones who step into the human emptiness left behind by everyone else. While other possible witnesses or participants kept moving, Valentine and Carly became the ones connected to the aftermath. Their arrival underscores just how alone Jordan and Curtis had been in those first critical moments. It also sharpens the contrast between those who faced the crisis and those who avoided it. In a story built around hidden truth, that contrast matters. Some people run from disaster. Some people stop and look directly at it. That difference often reveals character more clearly than words ever can.